house that was replete with symbolism and poignancy. William Shawcross and Sir David Cannadine. William Shawcross, if I can come to you first of all, the words that so forcibly struck me were the Dean of Windsor's address, saying, in the midst of our rapidly changing world, her calm and dignified presence has given us confidence to face the future. What were the standout moments for you?
He was absolutely right. I thought his words were exquisite. He talked about her great faith, her kindness, which is terribly important, her concerns and her reassuring care for all of us. And he said that her long life has been a blessing to us. In fact, he was absolutely right. A blessing to all of us as individuals, and a blessing to the country and to the Commonwealth, and thus I think to the world.
Thank you. David Cannadine, you were watching closely. We had a great moment indeed where we looked through the window of the studio and saw the massed pipes and drums coming down. It was quite a significant moment, and then we moved to this beautiful, peaceful moment inside St Giles, and to see the family gathered and to see what was indeed a very intimate service. What did you make of it?
Well, both that service here at St George's Chapel and at Westminster Abbey were extraordinary and unforgettable. Cause for sadness and sorrow on the one side, but also amazing spectacle and splendour on the other. And I think we could probably all agree with some words of Queen Victoria that this will be a never-to-be-forgotten day. And both today and in earlier days, I have thought of some words, late-life words of the first Queen Elizabeth, which might equally have been spoken by her illustrious successor and namesake. And here they are. Though God hath raised me high, yet this I count the glory of my crown, that I have reigned with your loves. It is not my desire to live and reign longer than my life and reign shall be for your good. And though you have had and may have many wiser and mightier rulers sitting in this seat, yet you never had nor shall have any that will love you better.
Beautiful words. And we must also remember, I think, we talked about this earlier, that what we have just seen has never been seen before. We have been literally witnessing history as it has never been witnessed before, and that is quite a moment for historians to see, I'm sure, David.
It certainly is. This particular service that we have just seen has indeed never been seen before, and of course there are many other aspects of these lengthy obsequies beginning at Balmoral that are new and that we have never seen before either. And maybe we will never see them again.
Thank you both so much for your final thoughts. They're very much appreciated. Well, what a momentous day it's been. From the might of the military parades and the splendour of Westminster Abbey to that hushed intimacy of St George's Chapel in Windsor. It's often felt in recent days that a veil of sorrow has covered the nation, but the Queen's funeral has surely exemplified her reign. She united us in one final act of togetherness, unifying the United Kingdom and indeed the world beyond in respect, ceremony and significance. As a very young woman, she famously said her whole life, whether it be long or short, would be devoted to our service. Well, never was a person truer to their word. And today we have come together, many of us with tears in our eyes, but all of us with an abiding warmth in our hearts for all that she gave. Just over 3 months ago, the world and a certain little bear said thank you for everything, and the Queen looked as though she thoroughly enjoyed the occasion. We will surely be ever grateful to have had that final opportunity to celebrate with Her Majesty her remarkable and long reign. If, as she once said, grief is the price we pay for love, then the weight of our collective sorrow is testament to the depth of affection in which she is held. She made history, she was history. Queen Elizabeth II is gone, but she will surely never be forgotten.
gather from across the nation, from the Commonwealth, and from the nations of the world, to mourn our loss, to remember her long life of selfless service, and in sure confidence to commit her to the mercy of God, our Maker and Redeemer.
Service in life, hope in death. All who follow the Queen's example and inspiration of trust and faith in God can with her say, we will meet again. Let us commend to the mercy of God, our Maker and Redeemer, the soul of Elizabeth, our late Queen.
Now on BBC One, the BBC News with Fiona Bruce, live from Windsor.
In a day of ceremony and sorrow, the nation and the world has bidden farewell to Queen Elizabeth II. King Charles followed the procession of his mother's coffin from Westminster Hall as the state funeral began. The coffin was carried into Westminster Abbey for a service attended by 2,000 guests, including 500 foreign leaders, royals and dignitaries. All the generations together, the Queen's grand and great-grandchildren in solemn procession.
All who follow the Queen's example and inspiration of trust and faith in God can with her say, we will meet again.
The funeral march echoed around central London as the coffin was accompanied on its final journey by members of the armed forces from the UK and Commonwealth. Around the country, people gathered in towns and cities to watch the funeral and to pay their own respects.
A few of us were singing hymns along and the national anthem, just immensely proud to be British.
Everybody stood up, everybody sang, it was very emotional.
After the spectacular pageantry in London, the day ended here at Windsor, the home of the Queen since childhood. Down the long walk, crowds gathered to watch the Grenadier Guards accompany the late Queen to her last resting place. And in the final act of the day, laden with ceremony, the wand of the Lord Chamberlain was broken symbolising the end of the late Queen's reign, and it will be buried with her. Good evening from Windsor, the final resting place of the late Queen, and where a service has just been held in St George's Chapel in honour of her life. Earlier, a day of the highest ceremony, not seen in this country for nearly 60 years, mixed with private sorrow, as the state funeral was held in Westminster Abbey, the building in which Queen Elizabeth was married and crowned. King Charles, along with other members of the royal family, walked behind her coffin as it was taken into the Abbey from Westminster Hall, where it had been lying in state. Hundreds of dignitaries, including world leaders, joined members of the royal family and the public at the service. In his sermon, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, said the Queen had touched a multitude of lives during her 70-year reign. We start tonight with our royal correspondent Nicholas Ritchell on the state funeral held today for Queen Elizabeth.
On a clear morning in September, the world focused its attention on London for the grandest and most solemn of events. For a revered monarch who'd reigned for longer than any other, all the honours of a state funeral. Within Westminster Abbey, where great moments of history have been staged for more than 1,000 years, the leaders of many nations came together to pay their tributes. Macron from France, Biden from the United States, Trudeau from Canada, and scores of others. They joined political leaders from the nations of the United Kingdom, all the living British Prime Ministers, faith leaders, charity workers, and citizens, at a moment in the nation's affairs when rank took second place to the desire to pay respect. To the tolling of a single bell, the bearer party from the Grenadier Guards brought the Queen's coffin from Westminster Hall to place it on the gun carriage. At 10:45, the order was given for the cortege to step off. Walking behind the coffin, the King, his sister, the Princess Royal, his two brothers, the Duke of York and the Earl of Wessex. Behind them, the Prince of Wales and his brother, the Duke of Sussex. From the Palace of Westminster, around Parliament Square and into Broad Sanctuary, the gun carriage was drawn by 142 members of the Royal Navy to the great west door of the Abbey Church, where as a young princess she had been married and later crowned as sovereign. As the coffin was borne up the Abbey's central aisle, among the family members walking behind, two small figures, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, aged 9 and 7 respectively, attending this most solemn of state occasions. On the coffin, a wreath with rosemary for remembrance, myrtle, the symbol of a happy marriage, and English oak symbolising the strength of love, and a card handwritten by the King in loving and devoted memory, Charles Hull.
In profound thanksgiving, we come to this house of God. We gather from across the nation, from the Commonwealth, and from the nations of the world, to mourn our loss, to remember her long life of selfless service.
All the music and readings had been approved by the Queen herself. A hymn sung at her wedding. In his sermon, the Archbishop of Canterbury spoke of a life devoted to duty.
People of loving service are rare in any walk of life. Leaders of loving service are still rarer. But in all cases, those who serve will be loved and remembered when those who cling to power and privileges are long forgotten. The grief of this day, felt not only by the late Queen's family, but all round the nation, the Commonwealth and the world, arises from her abundant life and loving service, now gone from us. She was joyful, present to so many, touching a multitude of lives.
After prayers, the sounding of the last post and a 2-minute silence. And the coffin was borne from the Abbey on the shoulders of the Grenadier Guards.
Right, she's been on to a couple of days before us. Can't lock her outside. Can't lock people outside and go work one thing.
No, I'm trying to pay respect with the blinds closed out to tell you to stay out.
But she can come in.
I don't want these noisy. I don't want people to come in whilst I'm filming this. Until it's all gone and finished.
As the funeral procession set off through the great streets and avenues of ceremonial London that she knew so well.
But she likes to smoke, so she can't have both things. So have a staying room or stay there and smoke her head off.
The way was led by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police,
One way or another.
the Commonwealth country she visited more than any other. It included military detachments from across the Commonwealth, recipients of the Victoria Cross and George Cross, and health workers from the NHS. The gun carriage was drawn up Whitehall and past the Cenotaph, where the standards of the Royal British Legion were lowered in respect.
No, because I'm trying to watch a funeral all day. You know, like Grandma's funeral.
Following
Well,
the
like the front door then, wouldn't you?
George and Charlotte with their mother and the Queen Consort. The procession stretched the length of the Mall and beyond. It brought the gun carriage to Buckingham Palace, past the balcony where she'd first appeared in 1927 at the age of 1, and where she'd been seen most recently during her Platinum Jubilee.
You get in there. You get in there with Clark. Go on.
Constitution Hill to Wellington Arch, close to her childhood home on Piccadilly. The military detachments and the bands were drawn up. The royal family watched as the bearer party placed the coffin in the state hearse for the final departure from the capital. The streets of central London had been cleared of all traffic, but the pavements were full, lined with many thousands of spectators who wanted to witness this final journey of their late Queen to her beloved Windsor Castle. The grey of the city gave way to the green fields of Berkshire. The long walk leading up to the castle was crowded for as far as the eye could see. The hearse was flanked by foot guards with their rifles reversed and accompanied on a rural road by the pipes and drums and a sovereign's escort of the household cavalry. The hearse made its way up the long walk. In places, the crowds were standing 20 or more deep. It was at Windsor that the Queen could indulge her passion for horses. As the coffin went by, it was watched by Emma, one of the ponies she'd ridden in recent years. As the hearse entered the main quadrangle of the castle, two of the Queen's corgis had been brought out by the Queen's staff. Watching the coffin's arrival at the castle, the King and other members of the family. In St. George's Chapel, a congregation of people who'd known or worked for the Queen had gathered for the committal service. This is the chapel she had known as a girl, where she had worshipped as an adult, and where now she will be buried. The Queen's coffin was placed on the catafalque. The Dean of Windsor spoke of her uncomplicated Christian faith and her reassuring presence.
In the midst of our rapidly changing and frequently troubled world, her calm and dignified presence has given us confidence to face the future as she did, with courage and with hope.
At the conclusion of the service, the instruments of state, the imperial state crown, the orb and the sceptre, which had been presented to the Queen at her coronation, were removed from the coffin and placed on the high altar. With the King watching, the Lord Chamberlain, the most senior official in the royal household, broke his wand, a white staff which is the symbol of his authority, and placed it on the coffin. The public lamentation for the life and reign of Elizabeth II was coming to a close. It was time for the world to draw back, to leave her finally to her family for her burial this evening in a small side chapel alongside her late husband. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
I'm joined now by our royal correspondent Daniela Ralph. And Daniela, it's been a day of the most remarkable public ceremony. As Nick Witch was saying there, it ends a little later here this evening in a private burial. That's right, Fiona. It has been a day of private family grief sitting alongside a nation's public mourning, and we have seen this pageantry and ceremony on an at times breathtaking scale. But the Queen is now back here in Windsor, the place that has been her home in recent years, where she has celebrated baptisms and weddings, and where she made that final lonely farewell to her husband, Prince Philip. And we now move into the final stages of the funeral day, and they will feel very different. They will be in private. This evening, the Queen will be buried with her husband, her father, her mother and her sister in the small, simple King George VI Memorial Chapel here in Windsor. We're told it will be a deeply personal ceremony for immediate family only. So after this period of time where the Queen's death has been a very public event, these final moments are for those who knew her best, as her family are given the privacy to say a final goodbye. Daniela, thank you. Well, huge crowds gathered in near silence in streets surrounding Westminster as the Queen's coffin was taken to Westminster Abbey and then on to Windsor. Many people, young and old, from across Britain had camped out for days to witness the elaborate spectacle of pageantry, pay their final respects, and share a moment of history. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning was among the crowds on the Mall as those gathered in London paid their tribute to the Queen.
Inside the Abbey, kings, queens, presidents and prime ministers. Outside, the ones without titles or palaces. But a rich, collective love for the Queen, almost beyond compare. Her country. The sound of thousands, total silence down the Mall, a mass of people, but the thoughts individual, personal. The final goodbye. No one wanted this moment to end. They knew that would be the end of this era. From early morning, thousands had streamed onto the Mall, determined to surround the Queen on this journey.
I've got a beautiful picture of my mum.
From Birmingham, sisters Pam and Alice also mourning their mother.
Our mum would sit in front of the telly when the Queen speak, and she would always used to be quiet, so when my friends on.
And my mum always said, if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be here. When we was growing up, she always told her that the Queen invited us Indian people here.
You're like staring away at everybody, aren't you?
3-month-old Bobby will never know the Queen.
She's been such an inspirational lady. Bringing Bobby was about, yes, she's part of history, but it's something we'll be able to talk about.
The words and music from the service filled the Mall, captivating, moving this open-air congregation. Across the generations, who will ever forget this moment?
It's humbling to have been here, and I think to have brought Bobby, it's the future as well. You know, this is the end of an era, but also the start of a new one. I'd echo the Queen and Vera Lynn in you know, it wasn't necessarily goodbye, but a real meet again.
May you rest in peace. You served this country well. You served us all well. She was everybody's Queen. All our Queen. So she's done us proud still.
The British people loved having her as their Queen. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
It wasn't just in Westminster and Windsor that people were able to see the Queen's coffin. The 22-mile route from Wellington Arch to Windsor Castle provided plenty of opportunities for the public to say a final goodbye. Adina Campbell has been speaking to some of those who went out to witness the moment the Queen's coffin went by on her final journey to Windsor.
Today was always going to be a family occasion. In Hounslow, West London, the Lopez family would normally be celebrating Ivana's birthday, but those plans have been pushed aside, and cheer has been replaced by silence.
It's very hard to watch. Very emotional. Yeah, emotional. 96, she from the country.
They wanted to see the Queen face to face, but they won't get chance to see in the future now.
It was kind of upsetting by seeing a lovely Queen's there.
Outside, the crowds were ready to say their final goodbyes. And joining them, the Lopez family, who made the short walk from their front door to the front of the line.
It means a lot for our family to come here and see this is the last day of the Queen's.
When we knew the Queen was going down the A4, we were really, really happy. So we come here about 2 hours ago and we've been waiting.
I think she served the country for so many years, and I think she was a great person and she helped a lot of people.
She's done a lot for our country, and it's important we all get to see her pass.
And then, the moment they've been waiting for.
Come from Goa. Tell me what it means for you and your family.
The Queen has allowed other people to come here to work, and so and now since we are here for so many years, it's like a home for us. It was really emotional. We were just clapping just to give her as a token of thanks.
Adina Campbell, BBC News, Hounslow.
Just over half an hour ago, a ceremony took place here in Windsor in St George's Chapel, the final resting place of the Queen. The famous Long Walk was packed with thousands of people joining members of the armed forces. My colleague Rita Chakrabarti has been out among the crowds today. We can join her now. Rita.
Fiona, the crowds are now dispersing after a long day on the Long Walk. But for people who want to hang on here, there are clips of the late Queen's life being played on the big screens behind me. I would say that the atmosphere here has been quiet and reflective, but there's been a positive element too. People have wanted to celebrate a long life well lived, as well as, of course, wanting to mourn the late Queen. And it's been clear from today that Windsor remembers her with deep affection, as well as respect and admiration.
The view from the Long Walk, recorded by thousands of devotees. This was not a crowd of world leaders or dignitaries, but of ordinary people who came to say goodbye.
Been quite emotional through most of it, actually, to tell the truth, which is generally not me, so, and you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, we just had to come up to witness it, like.
Yeah, it made me feel very emotional, but it was nice to see her come home and to say my final goodbye. And she'll be with Philip soon, won't she? So they'll be together.
Earlier in the day, a different mood prevailed, of anticipation and even festivity. Some had evidently been here for hours, but young and not so young were all here to say farewell. The Peabody family from Northamptonshire were passing the time and wouldn't have been anywhere else.
We wouldn't have missed it for the world. I mean, the Queen has done so much for Great Britain and the world, and we just needed to be here and ensure that we could pay our respects to her, as probably half of the UK and half of the world will be doing today. So just a tremendous honour to be here.
Headmistress Rhian Thornton camped out overnight, even though she didn't have far to come.
I live in Windsor and I work at the school, Upton, just over there. So we've got a little group of Upton families here who are all here together. We used to wave to the Queen on her way to Royal Ascot as a school, so I wanted to just come and wave one last time for myself.
Many others came from far afield.
We got here at 10 o'clock last night, so we've been here all night.
Hadiel Miller and family travelled all the way from Yorkshire.
It's great how we all come together as a nation.
Something bonding.
I think we're all in quite high spirits today, but at the moment, but the mood will definitely change later.
And it did. Solemnity and tears, and then the 2-minute silence. As the procession with the hearse went past, applause rippled up the long walk, with people showing their appreciation in the simplest way. It was quiet, but there was deep emotion too.
It's wonderful to be here with so many people from all over the country, and to pay our final respects to the Queen, her final long walk.
So many reasons to be here. Community, commemoration, and straightforward affection. A day that no one here will ever forget. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News, Windsor.
Well, as we've heard, the service in Westminster Abbey was attended by more than 2,000 people, which included heads of state from around the world, as well as foreign royalty. Aside from the security challenges, the day also brought some diplomatic sensitivities. Our diplomatic correspondent, James Landale, looks at the day world leaders descended on London to pay their respects.
As the King's car passed by the many Commonwealth flags en route to the Abbey, it was clear that this funeral transcended national borders. She was, one biographer wrote, Queen of the World, and today's symbols and service bore witness to that truth. Political leaders may have flown from all corners of the world, but their last journey was by bus. Rarely can so many African leaders have shared an outing quite like this. But there were too many of them to come by car, so they came together and queued together. In they came, some 500 foreign dignitaries in all, including about 100 heads of state and government. From North America, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and his wife, they didn't take the bus. And Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, who did. He first met the Queen when he was just a boy. From Europe came President Macron, who spoke so warmly of French affection for the Queen, and kings and queens from across the continent, from Spain to Sweden, Norway to the Netherlands. There were leaders too from the other side of the world, from New Zealand and Australia and many of the Pacific Isles. From Africa, a long line of statesmen and women, especially from the Commonwealth, the international organisation the Queen shaped and nurtured. And it was on the Commonwealth that so many prayers dwelt.
With gratitude, we remember her unswerving commitment to a high calling over so many years as Queen and Head of the Commonwealth.
Let us give thanks for Queen Elizabeth's commitment to the Commonwealth throughout her reign.
Then, as the service ended, it was time for the foreign guests to get back to their queues and their buses. And yes, that is the King and Queen of Spain, waiting in line like the rest. Meanwhile, the Queen's coffin processed up the Mall, escorted by Mounties from a country she liked to call home, and an array of servicemen and women from across the Commonwealth, the body to which she had devoted her life, and which today, in return, honoured her memory. James Landale, BBC News.
The Queen died on the 8th of September in Balmoral, and since succeeding to the throne, King Charles has taken part in services of remembrance in all the nations of the country. In a moment, we'll hear from our correspondent Howell Griffith in Wales and Tom Ravardi in Northern Ireland. But first, our Scotland editor, James Cook, on the events held today in honour of the Queen across the UK.
400 miles north of London, a lone lament for Elizabeth. The Royal Yacht Britannia is long retired, but its crew will never forget serving their Queen.
It's a sad moment and it's a sad day today
because you'll never ever get the likes of Her Majesty the Queen again. She was one-off. She was loved throughout the world. She was a monarch, she was a sovereign, and she was a mother. And in a way, she was our mother on here.
She was respected here too, outside her Edinburgh home, the Palace of Holyrood House, at the foot of the Royal Mile. Last week, this ancient thoroughfare, where history seeps from every stone, was packed as the Queen lay in rest here at St Giles Cathedral. Today, with the funeral underway in London, it is quieter, but by no means silent. On Royal Deeside, though, where the Queen spent her final hours, the funeral was a private affair, observed away from the cameras. But not everywhere was closed. Back in Edinburgh, the Crichtons, visiting from New Zealand, found a pub which was showing the ceremony.
The Queen and the royal family, despite being many, many thousands of miles away, we followed them and we felt that they were still part of our lives.
And yet, closer to home, a very different view. Is the monarchy important to you in your life?
No. They're symbols, but I don't see how they impact my life at all. There's no use for it for us. All it is road closures at the end of the day. And I get when the Queen's been doing it, she was doing it for over 7 years, which is amazing. She didn't choose that life, and that's something that we do sympathise with a little bit. But yeah, no, it's not our. Don't think we need it anymore.
That debate will continue under Charles, with Elizabeth now anchored in history. James Cook, BBC News, Edinburgh.
A faithful few feeling part of something much greater. At St Elvan's Church in Aberdare, they came to share their grief and show their reverence.
It was very emotional, and I think we all cried. I think it was first when she came out and they put her coffin on the carriage. That's the bit that got me.
For Sarah, there was a personal connection too.
The Queen did so much for the people. I just wanted to be with the people who brought me a lot of comfort since my mother passed away in 2020, so that's pretty much why I came. It's like losing your grandmother, isn't it?
Who has taught us by his holy apostles St Paul.
From the theatre in Colwyn Bay to care homes up and down Wales, small groups gathered, finding comfort in company. In Caernarfon, a few veterans paid their own silent tribute.
Unlike other parts of the UK, there were no ceremonial events in Wales today to mark the funeral, no big screens in public places. But this is still seen by some as a significant moment here, the end of a relationship that stretched back before Elizabeth's time as Queen.
She came first as a princess and in 1946 was made a member of the Gorsedd, the Welsh Circle of Poets, and given the bardic name Elizabeth or Windsor. In the latter part of her reign, it was the Senedd which became the centre of the relationship, signalling royal approval for what became Wales's parliament.
She redefined the United Kingdom. She said, I'm going to do what I did in Scotland, in Wales, if you want me to do it. So just ask me. Just invite me.
It's a legacy welded into Wales's history after an era where so much has changed. Hywel Griffith, BBC News, Aberdare.
In Belfast, the grounds of City Hall provided a window on the ceremony in Westminster. For those who consider themselves British, this is a final farewell to a much-loved head of state.
She means a lot to me, and I suppose this country has its friction over the years, but she's been kind of a force for reconciliation, hasn't she?
She'll never be forgotten, will she? Ever, ever. I'm getting emotional, I'm sorry.
There's been a sense of stillness and quiet here in Belfast today, as the sounds and hymns from the funeral have echoed around the city centre, and people have paused to pay their respects and feel a sense of connection to the events happening in London. But while much of the UK has been captivated by the royal events of the past 10 days, nationalist areas of Northern Ireland have a different relationship with the monarchy. Here in Newry, near the Irish border, many businesses plan to stay open.
It's fascinating to watch the pageantry and stuff like that there, but it's not the be all and end all. She was a lovely, lovely lady, but it's just business as usual.
Within the Nationalist and Republican community, royalty isn't something that would be top of everybody's agenda. That said, there is respect for our neighbours.
After 30 years of conflict between Unionists and Nationalists, the late Queen had helped bridge the most difficult of divides.
She's viewed as somebody who's contributed to the peace here, and the views that I have seen and heard from members of the community here are those of respect.
Let us pray for His Majesty the King. Back in Belfast, laying to rest the Queen also raises questions about Northern Ireland's future.
There's still issues of hurt, and still issues of reparations, and there's still issues of divided community, so all of that, still has to be addressed, but the foundation stones are there.
And today, Belfast joined with millions in an affectionate goodbye. Emma Vardy, BBC News.
Now let's take a look at how people have been following the funeral elsewhere in England. The ceremony was broadcast in venues in many parts of the country, including at St Wolfram's Church in Grantham, where people had gathered from early this morning. This was the scene in Leeds, where hundreds of people, young and old, gathered in the drizzle in Millennium Square to pay their respects to the Queen. And dock workers in Southampton paid their own innovative tribute to Her Majesty using shipping containers to honour the late Queen at the Southern Port. There were so many opportunities to watch the state funeral around the country, including in around 125 cinemas and several cathedrals. Our special correspondent Ed Thomas is in Hull tonight. We can join him there now. Ed.
Yes, Fiona, this is Hull's City Hall, and we're standing in Queen Victoria Square. We're hundreds of miles from the capital, but the heaviness and significance of today was very much felt in. Even before the start of the state funeral, people were talking in hushed tones. That's because for many who came to watch on the big screen, there was a deep sense of respect for the Queen, and for some, there was also a personal connection. From Westminster Abbey to the Humber, this was Hull's day to look back.
Everyone sort of come together, and the children will remember, and hopefully they'll tell their children.
Moments never to be forgotten.
So historic and so special, and he was such a good role model.
Together to say thank you to the Queen.
Just immensely proud to be British and to see what this country can do.
So when the Queen came, it was a bit nervous, because it's a bit scary having the Queen watching you do your job.
5 years ago, Melissa Tweddle met the Queen.
That's me there. Getting ready to do a pretend cesarean section.
At the time, she was a student midwife, just beginning her career.
Everybody was really excited. I had to make sure that I didn't trip over anything and drop the baby. Today, although it's a funeral, it's also like a celebration of everything that she has achieved, what she's done. And we'll always have this story to tell when Mummy met the Queen. And you'll probably end up telling your children and things like that, won't you, when the time comes?
Oh, she looks so happy. I remember that beautiful blue outfit and her amazing skin and twinkly eyes, a beautiful smile.
Sophie was just 6 when, bouquet in hand, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh came to Hull.
Everybody was so nervous. She was mesmerised.
Now 18, it's a time the family will always remember.
She's shown leadership and that sense of duty and commitment, and as far as we feel, she hasn't put a foot wrong in leading this country
and been an inspiration for not just our generation but many others.
Andy met the Queen in 2017. He's been recognised by St John Ambulance, organises Hull Pride. His has been a life of volunteering. What did the Queen mean to you?
I think the best of us. I think somebody who demonstrates that dedication of service and a life's commitment to her work. And it's just incredible to think that that person has gone.
People sharing this moment, touched by the life and reign of Queen Elizabeth II.
It was just really sad. Now, I'm still sad, but I think it's a great way to remember her.
9-year-old Ava Treadle, ending that report by Ed Thomas. Queen Elizabeth said that her whole life would be dedicated to serving the country. Our home editor, Mark Easton, now looks at her life and legacy and what she meant to the nation.
I name this ship Queen Elizabeth II.
There is a hole in our nation's life where the Queen used to be.
Queen Elizabeth II went down to meet the sea.
A golden chain has been broken. A requiem played to a kingdom's proud past.
When the Queen came to the throne, Britain and the world were still coping with the privations and aftermath of the Second World War, and still living by the conventions of earlier times.
Figurehead of the greatest generation, the Queen was respected for values burnished by war. Patient queuing, a fitting act to honour a sovereign who understood the significance of good manners, especially in dark days.
We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
Her death detaches living memory from the country's finest hour. But her parting is cloaked in a pall of patriotism that emboldens national self-belief. She and the institution she represents have framed Britain as a country with a special place in history and the world. Representatives from every corner have come to honour our Queen.
This is a nation, a commonwealth, a world saying farewell to the longest reigning British monarch.
The United Kingdom stands proudly in the spotlight of global attention. But it is a day edged in black.
Many in Britain are mourning their Queen, but also the death of an idea. Elizabeth signified a country unwavering in its commitment to duty and to decency.
Goodwill is better than resentment. Tolerance is better than revenge. Compassion is better than anger. Above all, a lively concern for the interests of others as well as our own.
The Queen understood loss. Grief is the price we pay for love, she famously wrote in a letter to the US President after 9/11. Grief was on parade in London today. And so her kingdom comes to the moment of farewell. The chapter is complete. Tonight we shall feel the weight of its final full stop. Mark Easton, BBC News.
We'll look back at some of the extraordinary images of the day in just a moment, but first, let's get the latest weather forecast. We can join Ben Rich. Hi, Ben.
Hi Fiona, thank you. Good evening. It stayed dry for the events in London and in Windsor today, and while there was a lot of cloud around, that cloud did break to reveal a little bit of sunshine. Now, many parts of the UK have seen extensive cloud cover today, and that cloud has been producing some spots of light and patchy rain and drizzle. And this area of damp weather just pushing southwards across the Midlands at the moment is now working into the London area. So as the cloud thickens over the next few hours, there will be just some spots of rain, the odd light shower passing through, and most of us will stay quite cloudy overnight. Where there aren't any clear spells, they'll tend to fill in with some areas of mist and fog. If you stick the cloud overhead, a relatively mild night, but any clear spots could see temperatures from around 5 or 6 degrees. Now for tomorrow, there is going to be a lot of cloud around for many. England and Wales should see some spells of sunshine. The best of that across parts of south-west England and the west of Wales. Thicker cloud for Northern Ireland and for Scotland, and out towards the west that cloud will produce some outbreaks of mostly very light and patchy rain. But it is going to feel just a little warmer than it has of late, 17 to 19, maybe 20 degrees. Southwesterly winds will continue to bring some quite warm conditions as we go into Wednesday, but then through Thursday and into Friday we see this frontal system pushing southwards and eastwards. It's likely to become quite slow moving actually across southern areas for a time, and that is set to bring some outbreaks of rain, some of which could be quite heavy. So as we go through this week there will be some warmer weather for a time and some spells of sunshine, but then some wet weather pushing southwards through Thursday and into Friday. That's the weather for now. Fiona in Windsor.
Ben, thank you. And that is all from us here in Windsor today on the day the nation and the world bade farewell to Queen Elizabeth. In a moment we'll join my colleagues across the nations and regions for the news where you are. But first, we'll leave you with some of the remarkable and poignant moments of today, remembering the extraordinary reign of Queen Elizabeth II. From all of us here at Windsor, bye-bye.
Will you solemnly promise to swear
are you not getting the data away
the United
later?
Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
solemnly promise to
Rarely has such a promise been so well kept.
See you later, bud. Asda, yeah. 24 hours. Yes! Alright. Philip. You're Philip. Best be quick, best be doing.
Dignified presence has given us confidence to face the future as she did, with courage and with hope.
Hello, good evening. I'm Roger Johnson. Welcome to Northwest Tonight on this historic day. An era ended for all of us today. For most of us, Queen Elizabeth II has, until now, been the only monarch we've ever known. And so this morning, streets here were silent, shops were closed and roads deserted, as so many watched the Queen's funeral, in homes, in pubs, in places of worship, and in public gatherings. It was a moment to remember. And for some, they just had to be there, in London, to see the pageantry and pay their respects in person. Mairead Smith joins.
A gun salute in honour of Her Majesty the Queen. Families from the Northwest among faces from all over the world, here to say their goodbyes to their Queen.
We've got the earliest train that we could from Liverpool today to make the funeral and watch the procession. We did aim for Westminster Abbey, but we couldn't get through, as you can imagine, all the crowds. So we've ended up in Hyde Park, watched the service from there. It was a really great service.
When the Queen died, I was saddened and I wanted to be a part of history, to be there, seeing her funeral and right in front of me.
Some got to see more at the Mall, including the Queen Consort's car making its way to Westminster Abbey. The Speaker of the House, Chorley's Sir Lindsay Hoyle, greets His Royal Highness King Charles and the Prince of Wales for what he said will be the most important event the world will ever see.
We come to this house of God, to a place of prayer, to a church where remembrance and hope are sacred duties.
The service led by the Very Reverend David Hoyle from Rosendale. Here in Hyde Park, thousands of people gathered to watch the service on big screens, a chance to play their part on this historic day and to get a closer connection to the service taking place just a mile away from here.
I've come down from Liverpool today. Actually, I was at the service at Liverpool Cathedral yesterday, and we just wanted to, I don't know, be part of it, and it was incredibly moving. And then when the 2-minute silence came, and everybody just stood, and nobody told us to, but there was just this, everybody in the park just stood, and you felt, yeah, we're part of this, we're part of this great moment, and this great outpouring of support and affection that it's been a privilege to be part of today.
Servicemen and women past and present paid their respects. Volunteers from St John Ambulance in the Northwest here to help.
Well, it's a unique historical event, something we've never seen in our lifetime. As well as being a St John volunteer, I'm a Queen Scout, and I felt it was my duty to come down and be part of the service and to help and support the people, which is what we do both in St John and the Scouts.
To be invited to an event like this is phenomenal, really. It's a real honour, I think, for all of us St John Ambulance volunteers to be asked to come down. A national call went out, and I thought, yes, that's absolutely, I'll volunteer for that.
Journeys made from the Northwest to the heart of the capital for Her Majesty the Queen.
We're here to represent my mum and pay our tribute to Her Majesty the Queen, who has served this country really well and other countries. She's respected all over the world.
I thought it was really important to pay respect to Her Majesty the Queen, longest serving monarch, so that's why we've come to London today.
I've cried all week, literally all week. Everything I say, I cry. The Queen means the world to me.
Mairead Smith, BBC Northwest Tonight, London.
Just some of those there who made the journey to London for today's historic events, but to closer to home. Across the Northwest, people who wanted to mark the Queen's funeral did so in their own ways, and for some that meant joining others at one of the big screens in our major towns and cities. Jonas Muller reports from Manchester, where the service was shown at the city's cathedral, which the Queen visited on her final journey to the region last week.
In mourning, we talk about solidarity. Being close to each other helps. There were tears shed and tributes to an extraordinary life.
She'll be sorely missed. She's done so much for the Commonwealth and for the world, and you can just see about the way people are. They're in awe because she's not here no more.
I thought she was a very strong, independent woman, and I think this is what I like about her. I like strong, independent women, and she was that, and she ran our country wonderfully.
Did a lot of work to unite the hearts, unite every faith, and put the legacy and heritage first. And so that's something that really close to my heart. Yeah.
Inside Manchester Cathedral, there was hardly any room left, as almost 1,000 people sat to honour a lifetime of service.
My hope is that being here today, people will pick up the atmosphere, the spiritual space, and a sense of God's presence, and all of that will make a big difference to us collectively.
The state funeral attracted huge crowds in the capital, but every second was also followed here.
We just wanted to tap into that togetherness and be part of something bigger than just watching it at home.
Celebrate the Queen because she's done so much for us, so we should do something for her.
King or Queen, Elizabeth II's reign was the longest of any monarch.
We were awarded the Queen's Award for voluntary service in 2019 as a community pioneering voluntary scheme. We're hugely successful in Knutsford, and it was an enormous honour to not only receive the award but also go to Buckingham Palace.
Here in Manchester, the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II was shown on large screens in 3 different locations, allowing people to come together for this historic moment.
My 4-year-old daughter was pretty upset when the Queen passed away, and she'd been learning about the Jubilee and the royal family at nursery.
Emotional day for everybody, yeah, and it's just nice being a part of everything, and obviously having a feel of the nation.
Yeah, it was quite emotional, especially because, as I said, it's a country that keeps all the traditions, so I even had a few tears.
It is my pleasure, in this my Golden Jubilee year, to declare the 17th Commonwealth Games open.
The Queen visited Manchester during moments of joy and in the aftermath of its darkest hour. Her most recent visit just last year.
I mean, that amazing smile. She must have stood around and met people for, I don't know, over an hour, completely unaided, without a stick. And I suppose when you look back now, I think she was 95 then. She was remarkably fit, which is why it wasn't such a shock now that she's no longer with us.
The feeling of actually being here, sitting with people with similar mindset, really, was so important.
It's just a moment in history, really, and really to just pay our respects to Her Majesty, and just also in honour of my own nan as well.
I thought it was a very good moment in history, but also quite sad.
No, it was her service. It would have been, you felt she would have been very pleased with how it went.
This was Manchester, but in any city or town, people just wanted to say a final farewell. Jonas Muller, BBC North West Tonight.
Two people there standing, watching avidly, and towards the end, as we heard earlier in Murray's report from London, there was 2-minute silence as the Queen's funeral at Westminster Abbey drew to a close. Across the North West, many people stopped and fell silent in a moment of reflection and of respect. Some of the moments of silence today to remember Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Well, whether we are with others or not, mourning is an individual experience. We're alone with our thoughts. But in generations gone by, many people watched moments of great national importance together on newsreels in the North West's cinemas. And Ian Haslam was in one of them, in Chorley today. That's the constituency served by the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle.
The Union flag was at half-mast this morning in Chorley as dozens of people began to gather to watch the funeral of the Queen together.
Cinemas and theatres across the region have been showing coverage of the Queen's funeral, including here at Chorley Theatre, which has been putting on events of national significance since the early 20th century.
We've shown royal weddings here, we've shown previous funerals here, we've had decent turnouts for those. It's nice to just come along and sort of feel that you're with other people who feel that same way.
Her Majesty the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh leave Bolton Town Hall during their 2-day tour of Lancashire.
The Queen made many visits to Lancashire and Cumbria during the early years of her reign.
I named the ship Dreadnought.
And Her Majesty, who was also Duke of Lancaster, retained a huge fondness for the counties and their people, a fondness that was reciprocated.
We're gathering together to share the grief, but also to celebrate a life spent in service, and Her Majesty very much supported volunteering, and it's always been the thing that you do your shift. I mean, thank you, Mum, you did your shift.
Whenever the Queen was in the area, huge crowds crowds of people came to see her.
Queen and the Duke next call at Ambleside on Lake Windermere.
And a decade ago, Lancashire played a prominent role in the Jubilee tour.
I'm delighted to be in Burnley at the start of this Jubilee tour of the northwest of England. Prince Philip and I look forward to seeing much of the hospitality and the dynamism for which this part of England is rightly renowned.
She's been a familiarity all the way through our life and my husband's life, and wanted to say goodbye in a proper way with other people.
What I want to say today is to represent the country I've come from, Malaysia, which is in the Commonwealth, and I want to say thank you very much.
Many people across the region watched the Queen's funeral in their homes today. Prestonian Kailash was awarded an MBE.
And I wear that with great pride because it was with her own hands that she put this on and gave me a big smile. So it's a very significant and historical day for all of us.
In Standish, residents and staff at Lakeside Care Home watched the funeral together.
It's been emotional since it happened, because I think such a lot about her. We've always been brought up to respect the royal family. She will be missed very much.
It's a sad day, but yet it's a day of rejoicing as well.
What does she mean to everybody, the Queen?
Oh, she meant a lot. She was there. Oh, she was marvellous.
A popular sentiment. Ian Haslam, BBC Northwest Tonight.
Ian there recalling some of those happy visits that the Queen made to enjoy the hospitality and dynamism of the Northwest, and for sure today will go down in years to come as one of those days where we all remember where we were on the day of Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, just as 11 days ago I'm sure we all know where we were when we heard the news of her passing. But for the 70 years of her reign, the Queen also held the title Lord of Man. That honour has now passed to the new King, of course, and people on the Isle of Man also stopped today to honour Her Majesty the Queen. During her visits there, she met most people and presided over sittings of Tynwald, as Ashley Tracy reports.
When the Queen visited the Isle of Man, thousands lined the streets to see her.
I exhort you to proclaim to the people in ancient form such laws as have been enacted during the past year and which have received our royal assent.
Since her death, the island has been in a period of national mourning. Community halls, churches, pubs opened their doors for her funeral, and in Castletown, the ancient capital, tea and biscuits were on offer for those gathering to witness the moment in history. You could hear a pin drop at times in this community hall in the south of the island, which showed the Queen's funeral on this big screen, and whilst it might not have been as busy as the scenes in London, it meant just as much to the people here to watch the service.
We do it really well, don't we, in Britain, you know, and it's one of those remarkable occasions, really, so I'm very pleased to be able to be here.
I thought it would be nice to be together at such a momentous occasion. Yeah.
And how did you feel watching today?
Very emotional. I think it is emotional. I mean, she was the Queen, and for a long time.
I didn't think for 1 minute I should be emotional, but when I seen the King's face, yeah, he's lost his mother. That's all I could think of at that precise moment. Not that he was going to be king, just that he'd lost his mum.
A place for the community to watch together.
It's once in a lifetime that, you know, a Queen's funeral. It's massive, and we just wanted the whole community to try and come together for it.
Elsewhere in a church in Douglas, people took to the pews to pay their respects.
I just felt it was my duty to say goodbye to my boss.
Beautiful atmosphere, so quiet, so still, and I found it a very moving occasion.
In line with the UK, today's events mark the period of national mourning drawing to a close, with many looking to the future, with King Charles III as the new Lord of Man. Ashley Tracy, BBC Northwest Tonight, the Isle of Man.
Some incredible pictures today, weren't there? Last week was an impressive spectacle as well. on the River Mersey as ships, boats, vessels, large and small, paid their own tribute to the Queen. And today, on the banks of the river, people came together to watch today's proceedings again. Phil McCann was in Wirral at New Brighton.
Just a week and a half ago, today would have been a normal working day. Today in New Brighton, under leaden skies on the Wirral coast, it was certainly not normal. Nor was it at rush hour on the M53. Nor was it at New Brighton's Floral Pavilion Theatre.
So today, the Floral Pavilion is going to show the Queen's funeral. We're going to be open for people free of charge today, for people to come and be a part of the occasion with other people as a community. So people that maybe don't want to be at home on their own, want to be part of the community, want to celebrate or mourn with other people, they can come to the Floral Pavilion today to do that.
But 225 miles away from Westminster Abbey, people were here for all sorts of different reasons.
You've got to go somewhere and dress up if you're going to commemorate it properly and remember it and pay respect.
And it's good to be with the British people. You just feel a bit emotional. I think because of it, it's more of an event. You feel like you're at the event as well.
And I've just lost my mother-in-law this week as well, so it's, you know, brings it all home, doesn't it?
The Queen, of course, was no stranger to the Mersey. She opened one of the tunnels under it in 1971.
I declare the second Mersey Tunnel open and name it Kingsway.
Liverpool.
Across the water, her reign saw the completion of the Anglican Cathedral, the International Garden Festival, and the transformation of Liverpool city centre. In more recent years, the Queen opened the Storyhouse Arts Centre in Chester. Today, it too was screening the funeral, bringing people in the city together. With the attractions in New Brighton closed, the beach served as an alternative activity for people today, especially for those with young children. But in the Floral, the auditorium was upstanding for the national anthem and until the Queen's coffin made its way into the state hearse.
Actually, it was very moving, and I'm so glad I came here rather than just watching it at home. It makes a difference watching it with other people.
We couldn't be there, but we were there. Yeah,
we're all standing.
Sometimes you don't think things are going to touch you in the way they do, and you know, it was quite emotional, but you know, it was a really nice send-off, and I think only we can do that here in this country. But there was one row here that stayed vacant. This was the seat on which the Queen sat when she watched music and dance here in 2013. Phil McCann, BBC North West Tonight, New Brighton.
Some of the images of today. Now, Owain will be here with the weather forecast in just a moment. Tomorrow evening, North West Tonight will return to its normal time at 6:30 at the end of what has been a poignant and pivotal time in our history. This evening, in a private family service, Her Majesty the Queen will finally be laid to rest alongside her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, at St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. The second Elizabethan era has ended. The Queen's many visits to the North West during her 70-year reign have left lasting memories for many here, stories to be shared and to be passed down the generations in our own families, history which was made again today. Good night.
Just sad.
The service was amazing. It was so peaceful, it was untrue.
I wanted to show my respect to the royal family, and I wanted to have a lot of respect shown for this day.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service.
She meant a lot to me, so I'm a big royalist.
It just felt right to be here and to be in the cathedral as well. I'm so grateful for them doing this.
She
better than any other monarch throughout the world at any time in history.
Hi everyone. Well, many of us saw some pretty heavy downpours today across the northwest, but there was some blue sky out there as well. And over the next few days, I think we'll probably see more of that and less of those heavy showers, but we're not really out of the woods yet as far as they're concerned. This is what's going on. We have this area of high pressure nearby. Very slowly, this weather front will want to move towards us. This probably won't really get to us till Thursday, more on that in a second. But for now, that's what's running things, and that's what's with us through tonight. As are these showers. Now, as with today, some of them have been heavy. Most of them, I think, will fizzle out. A few will probably return as we head through the early hours and turning quite grey and a bit murky in places. Temperatures tonight down to about 8 or 9 Celsius. Now, first thing tomorrow morning across the Isle of Man, it'll be quite grey, quite cloudy. We'll see an improvement here through the afternoon, which you'll see in just a moment, but a grey start to the day, I think, with some hints of brightness. Where we see sunny spells tomorrow, the cloud will tend to fill that in, and we'll see a few of these showers returning as well as we head through the day. But slowly it should brighten up from the west. It'll take a bit of time, but the Isle of Man, I think, seeing that improvement as we progress through the afternoon. Elsewhere, a fair bit of that cloud will tend to hang on in there. And temperature-wise tomorrow, we'll get to 18 or 19 Celsius. Now, over the next couple of days, the high pressure is still with us, but as I mentioned earlier, it's on the way out. Here's the pressure chart again. There's the high pressure moving away towards the east, being replaced by this weather front, and that gets to us later on Wednesday and into Thursday. You can see rain part of that, the white lines, the isobars getting closer together, so the breeze will strengthen too. But Wednesday, I think, for us should be a mostly dry day, other than the odd isolated shower. These will tend to get going through the afternoon. That's how it looks at the moment anyway. Highs of about 20 Celsius, so up a notch as far as the temperatures are concerned. Then that rain gets to us as we look towards Thursday. That's going to be a less settled day, but it looks like things should improve slowly then as we move through towards the end of the week and the weekend. Stay safe, see you soon.
This is BBC One, now a special One show with more of your memories and stories honouring the late Her Majesty the Queen.
Thank you for joining us on the day the world said a last goodbye to Her Majesty the Queen. Well, it's been a day full of emotion, but it's also brought people all across the country together as we pay our final respects.
Over the next half an hour, we'll be showing how some of you have been marking the day. June has been in touch today to tell us that she went to church yesterday and the tears just rolled down my face, she says. I felt the same today watching on the big screen with the people of Exeter. It feels like the end of an era, as the Queen has been a part of my life since I was born on Coronation Day.
Oh, special connection there as well. Ega says, I performed for the Queen with my choir back in 2012 and we all got together today to watch the funeral. It was so touching and emotional and good to be together as a nation to say goodbye. Thanks for all of your messages, and we'll get to more of those throughout the show. And later, Rav will also be speaking to some of those who volunteered to make sure today's proceedings went smoothly.
Yes, we've been reminded during the funeral, haven't we, of how important the pipers were to the Queen.
Absolutely, it was one of the first instruments we heard along with the drums when the marching started, and it was so poignant, wasn't it? And it sent a real shiver down your spine straight away.
Very powerful sound, very moving actually, yeah. And we'll be sharing a very special tribute from Scott Methven, who was once a personal piper to Her Majesty, as he performs in her honour one last time at the end of the show.
That is a lovely, lovely film with him as well, isn't it? Now, it's not just London and Windsor where people have been saying goodbye to the Queen. Over the weekend, people all around the UK have been paying tribute to Her Majesty in their own special ways.
It's a very special connection Ballater has with the royal estate in Balmoral. This tribute tonight is Ballater's tribute to the Queen.
Everyone here is like telling stories of, times that they met her, and I feel like it's a good way for everyone to come together and pay their respects sort of one last time.
It's been a weepy occasion, She was a lovely lady and she's done a lot for the area.
A very poignant moment in a place that was very special to her.
I think it was very moving. No more than the lady deserves.
It is the Henry Cecil Open weekend in Newmarket. We are using it as a way to commemorate Her late Majesty the Queen. She's had more impact on this sport than anyone in the history of horse racing.
Speaking to her when she came into the yard, the passion and the thrill and the excitement that she showed us was just so beautiful.
We're very privileged to have a beautiful statue of the Queen with a mare and foal at the top of town, and I think it's provided a fantastic focal point for our community.
Racing loves the Queen, and we've lost a little bit of our racing heart.
Having a minute's silence here is a way for all of us to actually celebrate the Queen's life and her love of the horse.
You could see how much she loved the sport. She will be dearly missed.
Our mural was created by a local artist, Alexandra Thompson, for the Jubilee celebrations. This has been great for people that aren't able to make that journey down to London. There's people mourning in their own ways at home, but having an opportunity to come together as a community, that's something that people love. It's a moment that people will remember, on the day of the Queen's funeral.
Because I can't get down to London, being able to perform my salute to Her Majesty, it's something I feel I need to do.
She wasn't one of these people who had a title and nobody ever saw her. She was really down to earth.
Down to earth. So many people have said the same, haven't they?
Absolutely.
They've remembered Her
And
Majesty.
so poignant to see people all around the
Yes.
UK paying tribute, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, Rav joins us live from Westminster now. Are there still people milling about there, Rav?
Yeah.
I don't think Rav can hear us, can he? Rav, can you hear us?
Hey Alex,
No.
sorry, it's very loud here. Yes, we can. Can you hear me? There's lots of people milling around. That's why it's difficult to hear you. Come over and meet some of the people that were here today, though. First of all, meet Jane here. Jane, you don't mind me saying you travelled all the way from Scotland alone because you really wanted to be here.
Yes.
Why?
It's been such a magnificent sombre occasion. The Queen has been with me all my life as a small child when I lived in London, and seeing her for her Silver Jubilee, when I was in the Wrens as a Queen's
I can see your
Guard.
badge there, your
Yes.
veteran's badge, so you're in
Yes.
the military.
I was in the military as a Wren, and my daughter, she's in the army, and she was the Queen's Guard. That was probably one of my proudest
And
moments,
how much
seeing
did today
her.
mean to you?
Everything. I wouldn't have missed it for anything, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the whole. Lying in state, fantastic. London has been brilliant, and the
Excellent.
Queen
Well,
has
Jane,
been.
thank you for sharing with us. Come over here and meet someone else. This is Maddie here, and Maddie works with Girl Guiding. And Maddie, you were actually working today. You were volunteering, helping people. What were you up to, and how was it for you?
So I was a wayfinder, so I was making sure people knew where they were going and find the best place for them to watch the funeral and the procession today, and just looking after people's welfare and making sure they were okay.
And how was the mood in the crowd with the people you were trying to help?